Hey, this is Jared of Cynautical. My podcast is on alternative health and wellness. I also touch on biohacking and a few other topics as well. My podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, also on my YouTube as well too. Check it out, and I'll see you there.
Today we have returning guests Elise and Dan of Momentum Strength and Wellness. Their company is based out of Los Angeles, California, but you can benefit from their holistic exercise and nutrition services from virtually anywhere through their online platforms, momentumstrengthwellness.com and at Momentum Strength Wellness on Instagram. These links are also posted in the podcast description. Today we will be discussing a few misconceptions and concerns about nutrition and exercise and sharing Momentum Strength Wellness's latest services. We will also cover the controversial story about the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Teddi Mellencamp's nutrition program. So welcome back, Elise and Dan.
Thank you so much. We're excited to be here again.
Thank you. It's always good to have you back on here because your holistic approach to nutrition and fitness and your focus on lifelong nutrition and fitness.
Yeah, it's all about the longevity.
So today we're going to start out with exercise. And one of the big misconceptions that many people have involves the scale. What exactly should people pay attention to with the scale?
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Like the scale is a really, really interesting tool, I guess you'd call it. Like it does, if your weight goes up, if your weight goes down, like it's a great way to measure until you kind of step back and look at the big picture because, what exactly is that number? Who's to say how much you're supposed to weigh? People are just different. Bone structure is going to be different. Body mass is different, and it's going to change as you're training. So I deal with a lot of people, as like training clients who can almost like kind of obsess over the number on the scale because at first you're going to maybe lose a bunch of weight, but as you're changing the way you eat, as you're changing the way you train, you might end up gaining some weight. If you gain muscle, like your body composition can change completely, but maybe you only lost 5 pounds and you wanted to lose 15 pounds, but you completely change your body and your health and you feel amazing and you look amazing, but you still feel like a failure because that number didn't go down to some arbitrary number you had picked or somebody had told you was important. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying my answer with the scale is that it's kind of an arbitrary number. And I think that there's better ways of gauging success than a number that somebody thinks. So if you have in your mind that like, I'll be healthy at 105 pounds, that number is just kind of pulled out of thin air. Even if you used to be 105 pounds and were really healthy, 10 years later, you could be 115 pounds and be significantly healthier and leaner and just more capable as a human. So
okay.
Yeah, I think it's an arbitrary number for the most part.
All right. So how about BMI? Unfortunately, the military still uses BMI. So what if someone comes from like the military and says, well, when I was in the military, I had to stay within the BMI guidelines?
Yeah, I would say unfortunately is a good way of putting it. I think the BMI is probably even more of an arbitrary number than what you see on the scale, because at least the scale is a little bit more personal. I think BMI gets kind of ridiculous. And just like I was saying, like with muscle mass, like so personally, I guess I'm about 6'1", somewhere between 190 and 200 pounds. My BMI, I think, would be obese.
Yeah.
And I probably walk around at about 7% body fat. So
yeah.
It's really, really just a ridiculous number, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm always obese with a BMI.
Yeah, ridiculous.
It's like, geez, how much body fat and there's like hardly any body fat to lose. So it can cause people to actually be unhealthy trying to.
Yeah, exactly.
It really does.
When you're chasing a number that doesn't really mean anything besides a number, you can run into some serious issues. So I think with whatever you're using to measure success, can just be like question that as well. Because if once you get too caught up on the test and the measurement and not on what it represents, you're going to run into some serious issues.
Okay. And Elise, as far as the scale goes, doesn't what you eat and how much water you drink also kind of factor in to that number?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's definitely, yeah, water weight is a thing for sure. And any type of, food, however many, calories that you're eating the days before and stuff, it's going to move the scale up and down. Also too, like hormones play a big factor in the scale going up, weight gain and things. So it's really hard to train, clients, especially both, for exercise and nutrition, to get them shifted off the mindset of needing to have a specific number on the scale, because it can be very detrimental to your health when you've just been programmed by society and thinking that thin is healthy, and the smaller the number on the scale, the better. It's really, we're trying to teach people that it's not. It's the complete opposite. We want you to feel healthy.
Okay. So what is the ultimate final word on the scale from both of you?
If you're going to take anything from us, we would say, Dan's guesstimating on his number too with weight. I don't think either of us have used a scale in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
It's not our method of coaching. I think too, like, we're coming off of very unhealthy habits, and I used to weigh myself a lot when I was younger, thinking that like I would be accepted if I was, at this amount of weight. Mind you, I wasn't telling anyone the weight that I was looking at on the scale. That was just my internal, ego self talking. So we want to empower people to understand, there's better ways to track your progress and your health. The number on the scale is irrelevant sometimes.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to training cycles. So, for example, with some professional sports or even junior sports, I'd say like football, there's different training cycles for building agility, conditioning, and building muscle. And they have the macro cycle, mesocycle, microcycle, so forth. And then for like voluntary adult sports is what I'd call it, such as, like fitness competitions, that doesn't really count as a sport, but they also follow cycles like fat loss, muscle gain, maintenance, so forth. Do any of the momentum, strength, and wellness programs incorporate any of those things? And if not, why not? And do you find them to be useful for your average client?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. It's there's sort of a lot there. As far as what we do with momentum, strength, and wellness, we're not really focused on like sports performance specifically. We're not, strength and conditioning coaches. So if you're competing in sport, then you should, I think, find somebody who deals specifically in that. What we're doing is sort of general physical preparedness and just training for, life in general, and like overall health, longevity. That said, we do also kind of go through some cycles. And I think that everybody should be training in that way. It doesn't need to be really strict. And there's always going to be mobility. There's always going to be strength. There's always going to be endurance. We're always going to like sort of hit the basics of squat, push, pull, rotate, carry something. But then with some of the programs, and we actually have some programs coming out. The first one should be, the first week in June, probably June 1st, we'll have our first sort of general physical preparedness program out. And then we're going to have a bunch more coming. And those will be sort of adjusted slightly so that you can go from one to another and kind of change it up, where it will be a little bit more strength-based, a little bit more endurance-based, like with each program. Because I don't think you should be doing the same program kind of over and over, for the whole year or 4 years. You're not going to get the same results. But I think when you can kind of shift slightly and, like I said, like focus on strength building for 4 to 6 weeks, and then you can focus more on, like you said, endurance is a good example. As long as you're able to still keep that strength and like stay in shape, I think there's just sort of branching off in different directions is the best way to do it. So that's the way I personally train. That's the way Elise trains. That's the way I train most of my clients. And sometimes it's intuitive. Sometimes it's like, oh, okay, I feel like I need to get a little stronger, and it'll just be 3 weeks of lifting heavy and then getting back into something more balanced.
Sure. So do you have cycles for, like, for example, do you build in resting periods, like a week of rest or a week of stretching or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to do, like, if we're doing like maybe like a 12-week program, there'll be 1 or 2 deload weeks in there where you're still lifting, but it's probably you're leaning a little bit towards like simple movements, lighter weight, and more mobility. Because I think it's just really easy to burn out. If you're always going as hard as you can, that's just as hard as you can push is going to be less and less and less over time. You need to pull back, focus on your recovery.
Yeah. So it's these cycles that you use for yourselves and for your clients are to prevent burnout and also to help your clients and yourself actually have energy for each cycle.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Would you be okay with an intense training regime for like 4 weeks out of the year or something like that, and then cycle off into something else?
Yeah, I think that's sort of the idea. And most people could probably do more, but I think like 4 weeks at a time, really pushing it is great. And then you can, pull back, have either a deload week and then a couple other hard weeks, or have like another 4 weeks of lighter training, and then you can pick it up again. And I think a lot of it does kind of become intuitive.
Yeah.
You can tell if you're working really hard and just not getting the results, you're probably overdoing it, and you can get better results by doing less.
Okay, that sounds good. So we're going to move on to the nutrition portion. We're going to talk about the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Teddi Mellencamp's, the controversy that she is possibly prescribing really low calorie daily food intakes for her clients. Mm-hmm. Now, Elise, were you able to review the information on Mellencamp's program?
I did, yes. The video was, it was interesting. And to be honest, I used to watch The Housewives, so I'm very familiar with it. I've stopped. It's been years since I've watched them, at least 2 or 3 years, but I'm aware of her and sort of her, accountability company, however you call it. Program, yes.
Now, I don't want to get too off course here, but it kind of looks like she has too much of a well-developed body to be eating low calories. So that was a shocking part for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. It's weird. I mean, you see on the show that she used to be a little bit, overweight, and she certainly has turned her life around and tried to be as healthy as she can. Yes. And that, that worked for her. Whatever she did worked for her. But I always say, everybody's different. Everybody needs tailored help and tailored nutrition advice, diet advice. I don't specifically know, her exact company guidelines and stuff, but what worked for her, if it is that, if she did only eat, 500 calories a day, it's not necessarily going to work for everyone. And I would really hope that she understands that and trains the people who are training others that, because that's my biggest concern. We totally take a really different approach and customize everybody's training to fit their unique lifestyle and goals.
Okay, so we're going to get into Momentum Strength and Wellness's approach to nutrition. But one of the main aspects of bringing up this story is people following celebrities for advice.
Right.
Okay. Right. So is there anything specifically you could say on that versus going to, say, someone who is certified, such as yourself?
Sure. And I think it's unfortunate because, our holistic approach, we really just like, what we mean by that too is just like getting back to our roots, understanding that like humans have evolved and been on this planet for millions of years. So we've kind of like lost our way as a culture. So where Dan and I come in, specifically, food and health and like mindset and just, overall wellness, is to get people really thinking more intuitively about their body, about their needs, about the planet, and things like that. Unfortunately, no one thinks for themselves anymore. We're kind of all on autopilot, programmed and then reprogrammed again by these celebrities, by these marketing tactics, by the big companies that are taking over, just bombarding us with controversial information most of the time that's not right. And we're just relying on, like you said, someone else's quote unquote expertise that's really not certified to give the advice that they're giving.
Just because somebody's on TV doesn't make them an expert. And I think unfortunately I don't know if it's programmed to believe that, but and that's what you see happening. And even if they're a doctor, just because they're the doctor that they've on TV doesn't mean that they're the expert.
Yeah, and they could be a doctor in a different field and not the field that they're on TV for.
Most doctors, I think, get like 20 hours of nutrition training.
Yeah, 7 years of medical school. And then after that, most of the information they're getting is from like pharma sales reps.
Yeah, I remember years ago when I first worked as a personal trainer, we had nurses in there all the time and some doctors, and they were, had some issues controlling their weight and so on and so forth. So we were surprised that they had really no clue on what to do.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it's scary.
It's scary. I would say that's one of our biggest tackles that we work with clients. Well, my doctor said, no, don't eat this, don't eat that. And of course, like, we don't think that doctors are bad by any means. We just think that, they've been misinformed and just haven't been taught.
Yeah. They're working on information that was wrong when it was put in the textbook 60 years ago. So it's tough.
And think about, the celebrities do work with doctors and stuff. So they're taking their advice. So it's just kind of like a never ending cycle of misinformation.
Yeah. So like with the Teddy Mellencamp case, do you think that she might be seeking an angle into the fitness community? Because unfortunately, working with other fitness business owners over the years, admit to coming up with their own angle that they don't actually follow. Because again, Teddy, she has a really solid build. It doesn't seem that someone eating 500 calories a day could support lean body mass. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think they're definitely like, I don't want to speak too much to it because it's out of context. I don't know the whole program. I've just kind of seen some headlines and clips about it. But yeah, so like maybe she did at some point have to cut calories really low to kind of find a baseline, to find what she needed. But maybe it's been a while. I don't know much about her, to be honest, but I agree. She doesn't look like somebody who doesn't eat, but maybe at some point she needed to cut calories. And then once she lost the weight, she doesn't eat that way anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's an important point. We don't know the specifics. We just know the news that was given to us on that story. So the main focus is restrictive diets. So real briefly, what can people do to lose weight and do it in a way that they can maintain a healthful way of eating for the long run that doesn't include too much restriction?
Sure. Yeah, restriction is a really, really interesting word too, right? Because there is a negative connotation around eating and things like that. It's almost like it has the connotation that you're punishing yourself, right? And we don't want that at all. We give people food freedom, right? That's what we're all about with Momentum Strength and Wellness. And what I teach very much is really taking a deep look at what you're eating and restructuring it. So not restricting people from eating the foods that they like. However, if you're addicted to sugar and you only eat pizza and macaroni and cookies and cakes, then yes, the restrictions are going to come in the form of those are all processed foods. That's nothing that's natural and from the planet, like we were talking about. So it's going to be restrictive in that sense. We talked about this last time too. Did Dan and I eat pizza and ice cream? Of course, every once in a while. It's kind of in a moderation that you're going to still be able to lose weight and maintain that healthy lifestyle. I will say though, when I begin working with people who do want to lose weight or have like a lot of mindset shifts that they need to make around food and health and wellness, there's a bit of restrictions because we do want to also teach people that even breakfast, lunch, and dinner, those terms are marketing terms. Snacks are marketing terms. They were just developed a couple hundred years ago. Again, shifting it back to like our ancestors and their ancestors, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They didn't know what breakfast, lunch, and dinner was. They were just like eating meals. And again, coming from the earth, they were eating buffalo and antelope and apples and oranges and carrots. That's whole, real nutrient dense foods that I shift people like trying to get them to picture that. If it wasn't made by nature, it was man-made. And how was it made? So that's really what I'm trying to like teach people and get their shift in mindset to look at.
Okay, so to focus on natural foods from natural sources that haven't been processed.
Yeah, or modified, exactly.
That makes a huge difference when you're talking about like restrictive, if you're restricting calories, restricting the amount of meals you're eating. If you're eating good quality, nutrient dense whole foods, you're going to be satiated, you're going to feel good, you're going to have energy, and you're not going to need to eat, an hour later, 20 minutes later, whatever it is. When you're eating a lot of highly processed and genetically modified foods, those foods are devoid of nutrients. So they might taste amazing. You're going to eat them. Your body's going to, trigger all these like hormone reactions and, oh, good, we're getting nutrients. And then when the nutrients don't come, your body's like, what's going on here? And it triggers that hunger response. Like, no, go back to what you were doing. Let's find those nutrients. So you enter into this sort of like roller coaster of eat food, then you're hungry, eat food, then you're hungry, and you're hungry, and you keep needing to eat more and more. When you're eating, high quality, nutrient dense foods, like we said, your body's getting the nutrients it needs so that it doesn't need to keep craving more and more.
Okay. Now the final topic would be nutrient timing. So do you incorporate nutrient timing? Meaning, are there certain foods that you think are used most efficiently at certain times of day than others? Like certain foods you'd eat before a workout and after a workout, certain foods that you wouldn't eat before bed, for example.
Yes, absolutely. We both believe for sure that nutrient timing is so important, and being able to intermittently fast is really important. Again, that's kind of what other people too call time restricted eating. Now, again, that has like a bad kind of connotation to it because of that quote unquote restricted, but it is so beneficial and so ingrained in how we were brought up and how, like I said, our ancestors lived, that we really try to work with people on the timing of things. Carbs can be great really close to your workout. So whether that be before or immediately after, but you don't want to continuously eating carbs all day, because what's in carbs? Sugar. And sugar is going to spike your blood sugar, especially at night with dinner. Dan and I stopped eating carbs with dinner probably like 3 or 4 years ago. And it just helps your sleep cycle so much more, because sugar and carbs, like I just said, is going to spike your blood sugar, it's going to give you that energy, and it's going to disrupt your sleep. The quality of sleep is going to be bad. Then your REM cycle is going to be all off, your circadian rhythms all off. So it does. Timing is certainly everything with that.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to hear you say that about the carbs specifically, because some people are totally unaware of that.
Yes, it really is. Yeah. And carbs are not the enemy, of course.
Yeah.
And think about it, like there's carbs in everything. Vegetables are carbs. Fruit is carbs. It's not just bread. Meat and fats those are what is going to keep you satiated. And, fat's been demonized, unfortunately.
Yeah.
People are really scared to eat it. And it's not. Like when you're getting fat from like an avocado or a grass-fed, grass-finished piece of steak, that's amazing. But fat from a cupcake and frosting, of course, that's detrimental to your health.
Okay, so I would definitely love to speak more in the future about the different types, the different ranks of carbs, different ranks of fat, and different ranks of protein as well. Not to just have like a ranking system, but different types, because that's another thing. Like you said, you brought up the vegetables and carbs, and you brought up bread. So one is processed, one isn't. And so it's really important for people to understand the differences between those. And I'd also love to speak more in the future about different ways of measuring success with exercise. So if you'd like to come on again and get into more detail about that, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. We'd love to. We could talk all day about this stuff. And it is really important because like you said, like the Teddy Mellencamp thing in the news, maybe she is doing things right and we're just not sure, but like, we hate that like people are, glorifying something that can be really harmful and detrimental to your health and well-being, because we've done it. We've been through these cycles, and this is why we started the company. We talked about this last time. We want to give people, food freedom, exercise freedom, empower them to make, decisions, and not only just do something because a celebrity did it and they're on TV.
Yeah, or blindly following someone because of their status.
Exactly. It worked for her. That's wonderful. It may not work for you, to keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah. And, like I said, there are many celebrities and other cases in which people are just trying to get into the market and they don't even follow what they're teaching.
No.
None of those people will ever be interviewed on this podcast.
All the
people trust you.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's why we love you.
So next time we're going to get together to speak about your 7 daily habits.
Yes, that's great.
And we're going to have 7 podcasts for each habit. And that way we can get into detail
about each one of them.
Yeah. And so that way we could get into greater detail, and the audience will know how to reach you and how to start working with you on those habits.
Perfect.
So before we go, is there anything new with your company? Any new promotions or services that you'd like to share?
We do. We've got a bunch of new stuff coming up. We've been hitting the ground running, just knowing that people need all the health and wellness that they can get right now. So Dan alluded to a new program that's coming out. That's going to be launched on June 1st. I'll let him talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, just real quick. That's we kind of talked about it before. It's kind of a general physical preparedness type of program. It is challenging. So this is not for beginners. There will be some programs for beginners in the near future, but this is for advanced trainees who want to work really hard for 12 weeks and get great results. Keep an eye out for that. That will be out, they said probably June 1st.
Okay.
And then we talked, we have the free guide. That's always there. That's on our website. You linked to that last time. That hasn't gone anywhere. We have the monthly coaching, the Momentum Method coaching that Dan and I do together. And then we actually just launched a new kind of little product, which I'm really excited about. It's called Build Momentum One Meal at a Time. And it's pretty much me. Dan will be on the call as well, but it's a 30-minute coaching call. And we did this basically kind of just like we were talking about. People are really confused and don't understand what what to eat, how to eat, when to eat, and Come in Us. We basically have like this really simple 4-step process of being like a little bit of a diet detective, where we're looking at your food intake for a few days and evaluating it and giving you a 30-minute coaching call on how to revamp and rework and kind of substitute anything that needs to be changed in your diet.
All right. All those services sound great, and they're accessible to anyone around the world, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. You do not need to be in LA. We coach people all over the country.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me on this podcast and sharing your information. All your new services will be posted on the podcast description.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us and listening to us.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is always fun.
You're welcome.